So I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but I just wanted to remind you about the Etsy Success Podcast if you haven't listened to it yet. You can subscribe to it in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It's a podcast that's put out by the folks at Etsy. It's a topical style podcast that features deep dives into different aspects of selling on Etsy. They cover one topic per episode, and the discussions feature Etsy admin who are experts on various topics like social media, market trends, keywords, etc. Now, on the Etsy Success Podcast, in addition to their Etsy admin guests, Mary and Tess, they're the hosts of the podcast. They also interview active sellers who are doing something really well on Etsy, and they have an in-depth discussion with them about that topic. Mary has an Etsy shop too, so she gets it when it comes to talking from a seller's perspective. And I think one of the best parts of the discussion with both their seller guests and their Etsy admin guests is the questions that they gather for them from the Etsy forums, because this is a really nice way for listeners to get involved in the discussion and to get a shop shout out too. All right, something else that they do that I really like is they have other sellers do the intro of the podcast by giving themselves and their shops a shout out, which I think is so cool because I like hearing where all the sellers call in from across the globe. And then they close the show with their shop talk segment where you can actually call in your response to a question that they post on their social media channels. And here again, sellers from all over the world can call in, and I just love the whole international vibe. Okay, so don't forget, you can subscribe to the Etsy Success Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, or wherever you get your podcasts. So go subscribe, listen to them, and then let them know you're listening. Podcasters kind of like that. All right, enjoy.
Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another episode. And this week, I have a returning guest to the episode. And you know how I always say, oh, I want to have you back on and we need to catch up again. I really do like doing these catch-up episodes because it's nice just to see where people are now and what has been happening. And I think it's encouraging for you as well. So my guest this week is Shah. She was my guest about a year ago in May 2017. And she ran the website and Etsy shop Little Spaces. And we talked all about what she was doing and a bunch of different things, working with a business partner. Shah had some very specific systems of how she did things. And so we got into that as well. And this week she's back because we did say we were going to catch up in a year, and so much has happened in that year. And so Shah, I am so glad to have you back on the podcast to catch up, and thank you for coming back.
Hi, Jama. Hello. Thank you for having me again. A lot has happened, and so happy to be back on.
You are so welcome back. Now, in case anyone hasn't yet heard our last conversation, can you quickly catch us up on what you've been doing between then and now, and where we left off when we finished our conversation?
Sure, but your listeners may not believe it because it sounds more like a movie than real life story, some parts of it anyway. So last year when we left off, we talked about my plans for, the next 12 months. And one of the things that we said I was going to be doing was Cloud Lights 2.0. So the Cloud Lights are the flagship product, I suppose, on my Etsy store and also on my Little Spaces store. And my partner Mitch was helping me, I suppose, bring it into the 21st century, make it a bit more digital. So we had been prototyping things, and that was going along really well until, sorry, by the way, we were doing that in our spare time because we were building our family home. Mitch is a builder. And anyway, but in August 2016, we had an arson attack on the house that we were building. Somebody robbed it and then burnt it down. So Cloudlight 2.0 has been put on hold because we're now like completely behind our schedule, and it was a really stressful experience. And the police still haven't caught the person who did it. They used a stolen car, and they did it in broad daylight, like in the morning at 6. They were caught on CC camera and everything, but couldn't catch them.
That is so crazy. First of all, I'm sorry to hear that happened. I mean, you hear on the news about arson and arsonists, just, people wreaking havoc on other people. But to actually be a victim of it, I can't imagine how that must have felt for you. And in the midst of everything else, I'm glad that you're all okay. I know you have a little girl, and I'm glad that she's okay too.
Yeah, well, we were building, so at least we weren't living there. We just received a phone call from the neighbour at 7 o'clock or 7:30 on a Sunday morning saying that our house was on fire. So, like Mitch has hopped in the car, and we live about 10 minutes away at the moment. And he could see the smoke from down the street where we're currently living. So it was a really scary experience. Quite stressful. I actually lost clumps of hair about a couple of months following it. Yeah, it was, didn't even realise how impactful it was, but at least now things have settled down. And
Now,
so
when that
it's
happened,
on hold.
okay,
Cloudlight 2.0
and
on hold.
with good reason too. When that happened, I can only imagine how upsetting that was, not just emotionally, but also with everything else that goes on, in life and with your business. At any point, did you consider closing up shop, or just because of, just, I guess, the disruption in your life?
I didn't close up shop, but what I did was I extended the timelines. You know how you can extend the timelines to 1 to 3 days, 2 to 3 weeks, that kind of thing. I sort of extended that, and some of the orders that were delayed, they did understand because I did explain to them what had happened. So, but I didn't completely close it down, just in case.
Yes.
I've heard so many stories of SEO going way down.
Oh, right.
If you, paused your shop, kind of thing.
Yes.
But amidst all that, I did still manage to write and publish a children's book.
Yes, and that was one of the things that you, at the time, had said you were going to be working on. And so, first of all, what was the inspiration behind you wanting to write a children's book?
Well, I guess there were a couple of different inspirations. So Helena, my baby, she's always my inspiration. So I get so many ideas from her. And I love picture books. She loves picture books. And, I always like to encourage her to read, and we read together, things like that. I'm always making up stories. And, she loves all these stories that I make up and tell her at night. So I'd been thinking to myself, I will, write a book one day. And then, of course, there's the other side with the business and the cloud lights. And I thought I'd love to write a story about a little cloud, just because I suppose it would be like a differentiation factor with competition and things like that as well. So if my lights came with a little storybook, it just kind of would make the product stand out, stand apart, that kind of thing. So it was those two things coming together and blending together in my head. So and we went on a holiday beginning of last year, just for a week down the beach, and we don't do a lot of holidays. And on this particular holiday, I was awake one night. Everybody was asleep. It was about 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, and you could hear, the ocean because we were right on the beach in the cabin. So I just got up and inspiration hit me, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And then when the sun came up, everyone was still asleep. The sun was coming up, and my manuscript was finished, the first draft. So it was an amazing feeling. Yeah.
Congratulations, first of all. I fantasize about writing a book, but it's always just a fantasy, like, oh, one day maybe. But I'm impressed that you did it. Now, how many revisions or not revisions, but drafts of the book did you have to go through before you were satisfied with the final product that you felt was ready for publication?
Oh my God, I couldn't even tell you, maybe 30.
Well, really?
So I did that first draft, and then when we got back to Canberra, then, you self-edit, and you go through drafts and drafts and drafts of self-editing, and then you get other people to have a look at it, like a critique group type of thing. And then once you're happy with it, then because I was self-publishing, it went through a proper editor who then, looked at it structurally, proofreading the whole thing, and then work together that way until you get the final manuscript.
And now,
so a lot of editing processes that took quite a while, because I would self-edit and then I'd put it away for a while, because you need fresh eyes. And then 3-4 weeks later you'd pick it back up, so you had that fresh eyes, and it's like you're reading it again. For the first time almost, and then why did I write that? And the interesting thing with children's picture books is because the word count has to be so limited, so you're looking at under 500 words. Every single word you choose in the book needs to either build the character or move the story forward. Do you know what I mean? You don't have any space for having words. Each word matters, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I'm guessing that's because your audience is children and you want to capture and retain their attention. So there's no room for, I guess, building a setting or laying a foundation that you would in a novel for adults.
Well, you do have to lay the foundation, but you just have to do it very quickly, and you've got to get into action straight away, if that makes sense. So you almost you're laying the foundation while you're getting into the action of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, I mean, you still have, so they call it a 3-act structure. So you've got the beginning, the middle, and the end, and then you've got the story arc where there always has to be a climax. You want to make sure that there is a problem that the main character has to solve. So you want to have all of those things, but you just have to do it in 500 words or less for young children.
Yeah.
So you still need all those elements. You do have to set that background and the setting, but you do it in maybe the first 2 spreads, and no more than that. Anything more than that, you're taking... they're going to get bored.
Yeah. Now, what's the target age range for the book?
So for my book, it is from 0 to 6 is what I've targeted at. So the parents or a carer would be reading it to the child. Okay.
And the way you market the book, do you also, for the Cloud Lights, market it as a product for the bedrooms of kids of the same age?
Yes, I guess so. Like with the marketing, I still do it through bookstores and libraries and different things. But when I start approaching the specialty shops, so I'm thinking about approaching home decor shops and things like that. And then I'll be approaching it from like a bedtime story, that kind of thing. Is that what
Okay.
you mean?
Yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
I'm trying to get an idea of how you will tie in the book with the with your flagship products, the cloud lights, so that you can sell them as a package, or
Yeah,
there's
so
that
I'll be
connection.
selling them as a bundle.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but obviously, one of the things that we spoke about last time with the cloud lights is, the issue of scalability because they're
Mm-hmm.
handmade. So, what
Mm-hmm.
I've actually done is I've actually bought um, smaller cloud lights, like the PVC type cloud lights. They're only tiny and they're not that expensive. So, what I've done is I've bundled my book with those tiny, small cloud
Okay.
lamps, and
Okay.
I've sold it into bookshops and things like that, and they've been going
Oh.
quite well, being
Okay.
sold as a bundle.
And and in all of this, we haven't actually said the title of your book.
Ah, it's called The Little Cloud Who Was Afraid of the Dark.
The Little
So,
Cloud Who Was Afraid of the Dark. Right now,
yeah.
where can people get a copy of the book if they want?
So in Australia, they can get it through the bookstores. In the States, it's available through Amazon and Barnes and Noble. In
Yes.
Canada, it's available through, I think they've got chapters in Indigo. I think that's their big one, so they can get it through that.
Okay.
And UK, Europe, Amazon, UK.
Okay.
So it's available through a lot of the big, so it's a hard copy book.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about the book publishing process that you went through for anyone else who might be thinking of um, branching out in this way or adding to their product line in this way. Initially, the first thought would be, well, just do an ebook or a digital product. But that didn't work, or not didn't work, but that's not the path that you took. Why did you decide to create a physical book as opposed to a digital version, which you might have been able to easily sell through your Etsy shop or your website?
I don't know. I think it's just because I'm a picture book lover and I
Mm-hmm.
love actually, there's nothing more I love than picking up a hardcover picture book.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? Like sitting with Helena. I don't know who likes these books, me or her, who likes it more. So, because we've got heaps of hardcover picture books and, I make sure they're in pristine condition. They're almost like little miniature pieces of art. And
Yeah.
so I guess I wanted to create that as well rather than just a digital version. So
Yeah.
I don't have a digital version
Okay.
yet of this, but later on I can definitely turn it into a digital version. So I think it's more along those lines. But the other thing was some research also suggested that kids' books, the parents still
Uh-huh.
love the process of sitting with the child and
Yeah.
reading it to them. So
Yeah.
I think digital books for adult books have really taken off, but
Not for
not that
kids.
much for kids' books.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I think so too. And I'm so impressed because I do think that, because of what you're selling, your main product, which was the cloud lights, it's such a nice compliment, because then you could get, like you said, when you get heavily into marketing, which we're going to talk about, marketing it as a bedtime story book, which ties in with what you're making. And I think that the potential for other sellers to do something similar, think of complementary, and it could even be a book that ties into the product you're selling, is just another way to branch out and expand one's empire. So when
definitely,
oh yeah.
and I think like with with the cloud, and I also, I suppose, one of the things that I tried to do is what would be useful to parents as well. And you'll find that most children, around the preschool age will go through fear of the dark. So
Mm-hmm.
my product is a night light. With a beautiful glow. So I
Mm.
thought, okay, so I could tie in the fear of the dark with this product, and it just ended up working out really well. So I think you still have to try and solve a problem for people, you know. So like with every product, if it solves a problem, then it's kind of useful and helpful and more desirable, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Now, because it's a picture book, obviously there are illustrations. Did you do all the illustrations yourself, or did you find an illustrator?
No, I didn't do the illustrations myself. I found an illustrator, and I found her through the Etsy resolution. If you remember, last year I was a coach on it, and one of the people who participated, Sarah, I met. So I met my illustrator through that. She is actually an illustration student at the University of Adelaide. And so we got talking. I liked her style, so I sent her a couple of pages of my book, the text, and I wanted to see how she would interpret it. I also sent her a picture book of the kind of illustration style that I liked. So then she interpreted the couple of pieces of text and sent it through back to me, and I really liked it. So then we kind of went from there, and it probably took about 6 months of going back and forth and refining things like that. So
how did you decide on how to pay your illustrator? Are there guidelines for such things, or is it something that is more a one-on-one discussion between two individuals?
Well, I think if you went through a traditional publishing house, you know, they take care of all of that. But on this occasion, it was just a conversation between Sarah and I, and you know, like, so it was my first time writing and publishing. It was her first time illustrating. She was still a second year illustration student, so we came to an agreement. Just between the two of us was what I was prepared to offer, and so we did it that way. The other thing I did before going through this self-publishing process, because I know, you know, how complicated it is, and I have zero experience in it, I hired a mentor. So my mentor, Karen, she is, I met her through one of the business groups, business mums groups, and so she actually owns a traditional publishing press, but she is very passionate about writing and building up authors and things like that. So she runs a mentoring program for people who want to self-publish. So I hired her as a mentor, and she sort of walked me through the whole process and held my hand along the way. So that was an enormous help. So she sort of gave me some suggestions of what to do for illustrators and things like that. Helped me with designing contracts and things too.
Nice. Now, did you meet Karen through the Etsy Moms Facebook group that we talked about last time?
No, I met her through a group called Mumpreneurs. So that one, I'm just trying to, like, business mumpreneurs or something, but that group's no longer there, but I made some good connections.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And just for anyone who is wondering, I know we've mentioned Etsy resolution. What that was, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Shah. It was a Facebook group that was hosted by Etsy Success, where they basically helped you through this Facebook group start your Etsy shop from scratch. And then they had people in there who were coaches to help the new sellers along the way, and you were one of the coaches.
That's correct. Right. That's exactly right.
Okay. And
they generally hold that at the beginning of the year.
Yes. And I just did a quick search to see if there was one for this year, and I didn't find one I saw the one that they did last year, but not one for 2018. So they might maybe have it later on in the year. I mean, we're still in the first quarter of the year. So So that's what that is, if anyone was wondering. So let's talk about your self-publishing journey for anyone who might be considering doing the same thing. So when you publish a book, you really have two options: to go through a traditional publishing house or to self-publish. And you chose to self-publish. Why did you decide to do it yourself as opposed to going through a traditional publishing house?
You know, what was really interesting about that was after I had written my manuscript back in February, on the beach,
Mm-hmm.
it never entered my mind to go through a traditional publisher. Isn't that strange? Maybe
Yeah.
it's just the entrepreneurial
Yeah.
side in me coming out. I don't know. I just thought I would always, I always thought to do it myself. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm a bit more of a control freak. So I just, said, when I was speaking to Karen, I said, this is what I want to do. And we just sort of went from there. And then I suppose halfway through, I was like, oh, what would happen if I had gone through a publisher? And I did a bit more research because I started going to, joined writing organisations, local writing organisations, went to a few conferences, and you had a lot of the publishers talking and things like that. So I've started learning about what would happen if you went through that process, as opposed to the one that I did. I think one of the main reasons was because my book was tied to the product in a way as well. I just thought it'd be less complicated if I just did it all myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I mean, if I did go through a publisher, I was thinking, well, how would it work with the cloud lights and
Yeah.
things like that? You
Right.
know, it's like they're handmade, so it's not like I can give them a big wholesale cut out of that.
Right. Right.
Just,
And that's
yeah,
not their business anyway. It's not
that's right.
marketing products other than books.
But
So,
what I have found out
mhm.
is if I was to go through the traditional publisher, I don't think it's for everyone. Like I just don't know that it's for me anyway, because number one, if they take you on, it takes 2 to 3 years from the time that they sign you before the book came out. I can't
Really?
wait that long. Yeah.
Huh.
There's no way I could wait that long. It'd kill me, I think. The other thing is like with the illustrator, they pick the illustrator, for example. So you don't really have a say over which illustrator they picked. So
Yeah.
that's a concern for me as well, because I like certain style
Mm-hmm.
of illustrations that actually fits into my brand, the Little
Yeah.
Spaces brand. So I'm always looking, strategically of illustrations might be beautiful, but if it's kind of not aligned with that my modern contemporary clean lines type style of brand, then it's not a good fit for me. But if
Yeah.
you went through a traditional publisher, you wouldn't have a say so much,
Yeah.
especially when you're an unknown author.
Right.
So
So, is there any circumstance under which you would say going with a traditional publisher would be preferred over self-publishing?
well, definitely. I mean, there's like lots of advantages to it.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, it's really hard for you to get a traditionally published contract, I've heard anyway. But I suppose the advantages is they pay for everything, so
Okay.
you wouldn't have to pay for the illustrators,
Oh, right.
the
Yeah.
editors,
Uh-huh.
getting the actual book made, that kind of thing. So they
Okay.
take care of the costs for that. Whereas with self-publishing, you pay for all of that.
And then do
Um,
they pay you up front to write the book too?
Sometimes, yeah, so most of the time they will pay you up front. But again, like if you're an unknown author, I'm not sure
Okay.
how much the advance would be. But the thing with the advance is it's exactly that. It's an advance against your royalties. So say that
Mm.
they paid you $3,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would have to earn that back in royalties before you got any more money. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing these days, so, if you're looking at traditional publishing versus self-publishing, in the past, in the good old days, I suppose, publishers would do all the marketing for you. And so, you would turn up to author events and things like that, and
Yeah.
they would organise all of that. But these days, because everything is getting so competitive and squeezed. If you're a new author, well, any author really, unless you're J.K. Rowling's, you have to do a lot of your own marketing. So they'll get your book put into catalogues and things, and they might do a couple of little things, but they don't have time to, I suppose, focus too much, because the publishing houses are shrinking as well.
Yeah.
So you still have to do all your own marketing. So these are all the things that I was talking to my mentor about, because she's a traditional publisher as well. So
Okay.
and I said, so what is the advantage? And she said, these days the advantage if you're a new author is, mainly in the bragging rights that you've been published. That's
Okay.
probably the main advantage.
Okay.
But I think there's still a little bit of a stigma, but self-publishing versus traditional publishing, but that's starting to go away a lot.
I think
And
so.
yeah, and I think they talk about, the stigma was there because of, I think, the quality of the books that were coming out. So the traditionally published books, you've got standards, they've got to be higher quality. The writing is higher quality, that kind of thing. But you can still self-publish, but go through all the processes that the traditional publishing house would, and you get the same product.
Okay.
So, I still hired a proper editor to go through everything at the end.
Yeah.
I still, wrote in a way. So I did some writing courses, to help with, especially children's writing is quite different. So you
Yeah.
always have to, I suppose, improve on your craft as well. And
Yeah.
the learning is a never-ending experience, isn't it? So,
Do you,
so
do you
you
think
can still, sorry?
I was going to say, do you think after all what you've learned and gone through with this book, you'd do another?
Definitely.
Oh, good.
I would definitely. I've got 4 manuscripts at the moment that are
Oh.
sitting and baking in different steps. So,
Oh, very nice.
yeah, so I sort of need to know which one that I'm the most passionate about. And yeah,
And do they
so
all tie into the cloud light still, or
no, they're
you're
different.
branching out? Okay.
They're different ones. But
Okay.
I'm always thinking merchandising with
Yes.
all my stories. So, yeah, so one of them is existing products. So that's something that I could buy wholesale. So it's a cute story around certain things. Another one is something that that one I'll probably do a little bit more down the track, because I can see I'd love to have a whole product line with it. So
I
it's a
like the way
story
you
I've been
think,
telling
Shah.
Helena.
I like the way you think. Not just about the book or the product, but merchandising. Like, okay, how can I tie this in? And it makes me think of like the phone companies or cable companies that are always talking about bundling. Like, okay, we'll bundle your internet and your phone, and we'll put all of these together for you. So you have to not have to, but ideally you would just want to get everything together because it's a nice, neat package.
Definitely, and because I'm in the business of kids' books, kids love that, you know what I mean? So you really have to think about who you're doing this for and what would they love, and put
Yeah.
yourself in their shoes and try and look at the world through their eyes. And
Yeah.
a book is nice, but if they can actually experience the story and be part of it. So that's what I learned, because I test everything on my daughter, and she loves all these interactive stories. So when I make up and tell her stories, like, she becomes part of the story, and
Yeah.
then she helps me build it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, so you went the self-publishing road. Can we talk about just maybe a little bit more detail what that involves in case someone else is thinking of going down that road? So we know that you have to do a bit more of the footwork yourself, but
Yeah.
how do you break down the self-publishing journey?
So I break down and I break it down in 3 steps. So there's the creation part,
Mm.
then there's the publishing part, and then there's the marketing part. So I can quickly talk you through almost
Okay.
dot point form for each of those if you
Okay,
want.
please, yes.
So the creation part is, that creating the story. So are you going to just write the story, or are you going to be the illustrator? Or are you going to do both? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you would write the manuscript, get it to a point, and then, find yourself an illustrator, someone that you can work with. And then, of course, there's the editing. So always make sure you go to a professional editor, because, they'll have a look at your structure. And so it's not just proofreading, but they'll look at the whole thing for you.
Okay.
So because that is your product, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So your product has to be the best that it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And then so once you've got all of that down pat, the publishing part. So, there's, like you mentioned earlier, are you going to just go down the ebook route? Because you can. There's the actual physical printing of it. So I got my printing done in China, again, through my publishing mentor. So if you're looking at self-publishing and you've never been through this process, I would recommend getting yourself a mentor, because they are worth the money.
Yeah.
They save you from making so many mistakes.
Yeah.
But I'm talking, get yourself a proper mentor, not the kind that says, give us $7,000 and we'll mentor you through, and then we'll, help you publish the book. So I think some of them might be okay. I don't understand a lot of them, but I know that the industry kind of says, yeah, be a bit wary of that.
Okay.
So,
but Shah, before you continue, how would you recommend one find a good mentor?
I don't know, actually. I can give you the details of my mentor. She's awesome.
Is she open
So,
to accepting new mentees in case someone else wants to reach out to her?
I think so.
Okay.
Because her goal is to establish authors, publish 100 books this year in 2018.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
yeah,
Okay.
she's already at 55. So there's a group of us. We all have, she's set up a Facebook page where we all support and interact and learn from each other, as well as her. So,
okay.
yeah, so the book counts up to 55, and we're only in April. So,
okay. Oh, that's good.
but she would be. I can get you details if you.
Okay, that would be great, because I think sometimes the best is just word of mouth references, because you can Google from now till, the end of time and still make mistakes. But if someone has a good experience with someone else and they're willing to take on more people, I think that would be great. So if you're listening to this and you're looking for a mentor, go to convome.com, look in the show notes for this episode, and Shah and I will talk offline and I'll get information for you.
And if your audience is interested in the self-publishing side of things, I can even ask her if she'll come on your show. Then you can sort of get it from the horse's mouth kind of thing. What happened?
Perfect. I would love that. Yes.
But in terms of the publishing part, so
yes.
In Australia anyway, it's quite expensive to get books printed in Australia. So, but she does it through a Chinese publishing printing company. So I just went through who she went through, and she organised that side of it for me.
Right.
So again, she didn't take a cut off profits, or she didn't take a cut of anything. It was just I just paid her once for the mentoring fee at the beginning, and yeah, she just shared all her contacts with me. So
Great. Yeah. And that's
the
so
other
helpful
thing,
because it saves you from, just having to do additional footwork that you might not
ex-
need to.
exactly, and then I get it. I get the prices that she gets it because
Yeah.
her being they're printing books all the time because that's
Yeah.
their business. So
Good deal.
the other thing, of course, is so that's your own printing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really good for when you're um, doing your own marketing and things like that. So I got 1,000 books printed, like
Mm-hmm.
a bulk printing. The other thing is print on demand. Do you know about print on
Uh-huh.
demand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went through Ingram Spark for print on demand. So they're with all the big. They've got partnerships with the Amazons and the Barnes and Nobles and in all different countries.
Mm.
So so I also have my little cloud listed on, like, yeah, through Ingram Spark, so it's available
Okay.
pretty much everywhere.
So that's so that takes us through the publishing. And so
Mm,
marketing, which is like the final step, is I assume after you've created it and published it, you're always going to be marketing the book.
that's right. Yeah. So I suppose there's like it's interesting because I've got like these little bubbles written in front of me so I can talk you through. So you've got bookstores, so you've got independent bookstores, chain stores, and then you've got libraries, you've got
Yeah.
standing orders, you've got specialty stores. So there's some of the places or outlets you could you try and get your book into, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, but through Karen, what she explained to me was you can get yourself a distributor. So that's what traditional publishing houses do as well. So they
Oh.
go through distributors. So she put me in touch with distributors. So I've just picked one that
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to work with, and so they help you market it, I guess. So they put it in their catalogues, and they're meeting with bookstores and things like that all the time. So
Okay.
you can get your books out there that way. There's library services, so I contacted a couple of them in Australia, and so I'm on their library services catalogue. So they market into all the different libraries
Mm.
in Australia. So there would be something similar in the States and in each country as well. There's also things called standing orders, which is like a subscription service. So these companies schools and daycare centres,
Yeah.
book clubs, things like that, will have a subscription for a certain number of books to be sent to them on a monthly basis. And so I was lucky enough to secure myself one of these standing orders with a company in Australia. So before my book was actually released, I already had sold a bulk order.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and I was so happy about that because most of the time they only take on traditionally published books. So
Mm-hmm.
I created a advanced copy and sent it to them probably like 4 months, 4 months before the book was released, and said, "Would you be interested? Would you consider this?" And told them a little bit about what the story was about,
Yeah.
and then sent them a PDF copy of the advanced copy, and they really liked it, and they said, "Yeah, we'll take this on." So the good thing about the standing order is it's a firm sale because all the books are already sold.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know if you know, but when you sell into bookstores, it is 100% returnable. So you have to you get it into the bookstores, but then if it doesn't sell, they will return the books back to you.
Really?
Yeah, all
S-
bookstores work that way.
Oh, so do they buy them up front and then you have to refund them, or it's more of a
So,
consignment style sale?
well, two different. Both is like a consignment, but when you go through a distributor, they will pay you up front, but then the distributor will refund if anything gets returned, and then the distributor pays you, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So but if you approach the bookstores direct, and if you're not a well-known author, they'll trial you on consignment.
Okay.
At the beginning, and then if that goes well, then they'll generally put like an order in. But the order is like until somebody's actually bought the book, you may have to refund that, So
Now, what
mm.
about, say, Amazon? Does your publisher send them a certain amount of inventory or books?
No,
And
this is the print on demand I was talking about. So like places like
okay.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. So if you go through what print on demand is, how that works is when somebody buys the book, that's when the book is printed one at a time.
Oh, okay. So it's print on
Yeah,
demand through those services. Okay.
that's right. So
Now,
so I go through Ingram Spark. So I set my prices, things like that. So when somebody buys a book, say on Amazon US, then what happens is Ingram Spark then says, where is the closest printing house to the person who has ordered it? And then the file, and then they get it printed there and then shipped from within the United States. So the shipping's really cheap as well. Because if I was to ship a book from Australia to the States, it'll
oh,
cost more than the cost of the book. It
yeah.
costs like $27.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
how do they?
whereas if you buy it through Amazon, because it's being printed in America and sent out through the Prime, yeah, it's hardly anything.
How do they guarantee uniformity in the product if different printing houses are going to print, each book when it's ordered?
I think Ingram Spark have partnerships with the printing houses.
Okay.
So I think they do a level of, I suppose, quality control there.
Yeah.
But the other thing is when you actually set your book up in these pod systems, you get to select the type of cover, the print quality, the, type of paper, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So there would be
Oh.
slight differences perhaps between, things that are printed in Australia versus America versus UK.
Yeah.
But it's still, so I've sort of selected the best cover that you can get, the best ink,
Okay.
because but then it makes it really expensive as well. So you
Yeah.
don't make a lot of money on books anyway.
That was the next thing I was going to ask was not how much you make necessarily, but what the
Uh,
return is on the investment, and then how do you get your money in the end? Does it come through Ingram Spark? Does it come from Amazon, or
so
who's yeah?
yeah, I can tell you about all of those. So if you go through Ingram Spark, they will pay you. So you set up your bank accounts
Okay.
and everything. So I think once a month or once a fortnight, they'll give you a report of what's sold, and money
Okay.
goes straight into your account.
Okay.
So basically, it all gets, like all the different currencies, they work it all out, but I sort of set it all up front.
Okay.
So Ingram Spark's still not too bad. I might make maybe $4 a book. So so I think my book sells for $19.99 US, and I think I make about $4 out of it.
You're kidding.
Oh, that's good compared
Is
to what you
it?
make. Yeah,
Who?
that's really good. So like in Australia, hang on, I've got a breakdown. I'm happy to share the breakdown. So,
Okay.
the standing order that I was talking about before, where
Yes.
they put it into schools, they take 70% of recommended retail.
Oh my word.
And they have to do that because, and by the way, 70%, I still have to pay for all the cost. And they take 70% of the recommended retail. So I have worked out that I make about 95 cents a book for that.
What?
Out of a $25 retail book. So, but that's okay, because for me, I look at it as though I'm getting my author name out there. Do you know what I mean? But
yes, because I was
it's not
just
a lot of
about to
money.
ask. Yes, that okay. Let's talk about the why. And so for you right now, it's more about becoming a published author and getting your name out there.
That's right.
Okay.
And also, mine's tied to the products and things
Yes.
as well. But
Yeah.
when I sell it through my own website,
Mm-hmm.
I do make more money than
Okay.
that. Do you know what I mean? Distributors are the same. The reason they charge so much is because they still they distribute it for you, and they pass on some of the discounts as well.
Yeah.
So, for example, a distributor will again take 70%, but then they will pass on 40% to bookstores. Does that make sense? So if I approach a bookstore direct, I have to give them a 40% wholesale offer.
Mm-hmm.
So when a distributor approaches them, they still have to give the bookstore 40%. So they're only left with 30%. Does that make sense? It's like
Yeah.
a pie, and everyone takes a slice.
Yeah. Yes. That's the impression I'm getting is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but traditionally, so if you went down the traditional route,
Mm-hmm.
if your standard commissions are 10%, 5% for the author, 5% for the illustrator. So it's much of a muchness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when
So,
it
but
comes,
when you sell on your own website, you do get a bit more of the pie.
Okay. Yeah, and that does make sense. But then again, selling on your own website still involves work on your part to get the traffic there.
Definitely. And of course, like nobody wants to pay shipping on top. So you've got to include shipping in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Shipping is $8 for the book.
Okay.
To ship the book.
And that's
So
just
basically
within
you've got to
Australia.
build it in. Yeah, just within Australia. You guys have a lot better with shipping.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm.
So as a book publisher, at what point or when do you think it then becomes a profitable venture?
I couldn't answer that.
Okay.
I couldn't answer that, Ijama, but I think perhaps once you've got a few books there, so when somebody's looking at buying one, if they buy an additional one, I think that's how you build. Or unless, your book somehow gets picked up by New York Times bestseller, things like that, and I think then you would probably do quite well in that sense. But I don't know how to answer that, because I'm not there yet.
Yeah. Well, I am praying and hoping that you get to that point and then come back and tell us how it happened and when.
Yeah, definitely. I hope so too. And I've heard that it's quite hard with children's books, just because the cost of the production is so high.
Yeah.
So, but I love the children's books. So, and I think I'll grow as Helena grows. So, when she gets a little bit older, I'll probably end up writing chapter books, and who knows? And then when she's a young adult, I'll probably get into the young adult books, because she's my inspiration.
Yes. Well, it's good that your inspiration is constantly changing, because then you can change with the times as well and still stay on top of it.
Definitely. But I think with the book marketing side of it, it's when you start doing, how we were talking about bundling before. So I think you just have to think creatively. So if you created a product for your story, or you created a story for your product, then the two of them coming together, I think, creates this third dimension, and they propel each other. That's what I think anyway. So because I can see that the bundles that I'm selling are doing really well, as opposed to just a single book.
They are or are not?
They are. They
Okay.
are.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's the desired end result is, for them to go together, which is what I like about, how you've done it and this, this whole idea that you've come up with and run with.
And the Etsy shop owners can definitely do that. So imagine, someone that sells a handmade soft toy, for example.
Yeah.
Just, build a story around the soft toy. But before you build
Yes.
a story, study kids and, talk to parents and try and find out what some of their pain points might be.
Yeah.
And then if you can create the story, if
Yes.
it's like, if the child needs comfort or whatever, you might design a story about your toy, give it a name and a character, and that way then the two become emotionally connected, and you're helping the parent and the child as well.
Yes. I love that idea. And that was really why I was excited to, I mean, not the only reason why I was excited to talk to you, but one of the reasons was just because I see the potential, just thinking outside the box of, okay, this is my product and this is what I sell in my Etsy shop, but it can be so much more. I think of, and I don't know if this is exactly going to be a good analogy or illustration of the point, but I don't know if you have, well, if you have these in Australia, but there's this doll called the American Girl dolls, which now I say it out loud, maybe you don't because it's American Girl, but
Yeah, no, I haven't seen them.
yeah. So there are these girls, there are these dolls, and everyone has a story. And so there will be chapter books about each one, and they debut a new one every year. There's an American Girl doll of the year every year. And she comes with all kinds of props and storybooks and about her life and her adventures and all whatnot. And I think that idea can be translated also into an Etsy seller who has products that you can create a story around as well. And yes, everyone isn't an author, but I, I I don't know. And now I'm thinking, would it be worth it to even try outsourcing the writing of a story? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that's a whole different conversation.
That is a whole different conversation. But I mean, like, if it's something that interests them, they can do courses on writing. I've
Yes.
just recently done a really awesome children's book writing course, where
Mm.
they really teach you the structure and how to approach it and things like that. So,
Yeah.
um,
Okay, good.
and hire an editor, get a critique group, things like that, so you can practice your craft and do it in that way.
Yeah.
So only if you have an interest, I guess.
Yes.
But you might
And we
be able
should
to
throw in that
outsource it.
caveat if you have an interest.
Yeah. So the other thing that I'm now thinking, so originally, Ijama, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to sell, I'm going to sell the book only with my cloud lights, but I've actually evolved in my thinking now. So what I'm thinking now that I have the book is my cloud lights are limited, they're handmade, I can only make certain amount each year. But there's lots of companies selling different types of cloud lights. So I'm going to approach those companies and see if they want to collaborate and do a partnership.
Oh, nice.
So So I thought, well, why limit it to mine? Like the story is going, the story is about helping children who are afraid of the dark find some personal power so they're not afraid of the dark. It's a really sweet story.
Right.
So every cloud lamp could be paired with this. Does that make sense?
It
So I've got a
does.
list of people I want to talk to, and I suppose pitch them the story. The
Yeah.
other thing I forgot to mention was one of the important things are expert reviews. So this is what Karen had taught me while I was getting my book printed and going through that publishing journey. She said, make sure you get some expert reviews. So I was like, what on earth is an expert review?
What
as
isn't?
opposed to like a normal review. So, so normal review is people who, you know, read your book and they might do Amazon reviews and stuff. So,
Okay.
and then you've got trade reviews, which are public trade publications. They will review an advance copy, but some of them you've got to pay like $1,500 or something to get reviewed, and I couldn't afford that. And that's mainly for if you want to get picked up by publishers and things. So, and I wasn't interested in that side, so I didn't go down that route. But the expert review is the one in the middle, so it's almost like your celebrity endorsement type area, right?
Oh.
So in my case, because my book is about helping children not be afraid of the dark, I then looked at, well, who would be considered an expert on child sleep or anxiety, that type of thing.
Right.
So I got 3 expert reviews. So the first one was from, and I just approached them and explained why I wrote it, how it's different to others. So I got a review from a doctor who worked at he's in charge of the sleep center for the Boston Children's Hospital,
Wow.
and he's also I think assistant professor at Harvard University. So he's published lots of books himself around child sleep and things like that. So I wrote to him, sent him an advanced copy of it, and I explained to him I suppose my reasoning and my thinking behind why I wrote the story the way I did.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is, when children are around the preschool age, when they're afraid of the dark, the parent can say, don't be afraid of the dark. You can rationalize it, but it doesn't really help because fear is not a rational thing, especially,
Right.
you know, for a 3, 4, 5-year-old. So my story is like a bit more magical. So Helena always says, Mummy, I'm magical. So I put this magical element into it where this little cloud, this magical, has been given this magical power, and now he's looking after all the little boys and girls. So through his magic, he looks after them by glowing in their room. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that magical thinking side of it, which sometimes helps more than that rational.
Yes.
So this Harvard professor, like, he really liked it, so he wrote a really lovely review for me. The other person I approached was a child therapist who specialises in children's anxiety and OCD.
Yeah.
So I sent her an advance copy, and she really loved it. So she wrote a great endorsement review for me. And a third person was a preschool teacher. So I kind of went, who are the experts in my industry, in this industry, and sort of got endorsements from them. And so that helps me sort of build trust, I suppose, with my potential, the parents who might be buying this book.
I love that you did that. I never thought about that. But now that you mention it, I realize that sometimes when I pick up a book to read, I will look through, you know how they'll have there'll be a section at the beginning, or maybe in, on the back cover where it says praise for, this book. And before I read what they're saying, I look at who is saying it. And I look for if I know anyone that I trust enough to read their review of the book. I mean, I figure if it's in the book or on the book, it's obviously a good review. But I always look to see who are these people whose reviews of the book they're printing. And, is there anyone that I would trust enough to, if they said, oh, this is a great book, it's a great story, or what have you. And usually if I see someone who stands out, or someone who I think, well, not know personally, but sometimes they're like in this case, if a physician whose specialty is working with children, or he's a pediatrician, says, oh, this is a great book for kids, and I see what he says, and that would speak volumes to me, like, oh, okay, this pediatrician is recommending this book. It speaks a lot more to me than, say, if it was just Joe you know.
That's right. Yeah. I think it's a fantastic starting point.
Yeah.
And then from there, you know, like for me, like other parents, so that's a great starting point, especially if you're trying to get it into bookstores and libraries and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
they want, you know, I suppose someone with a title, they look for things like that more. And also the other side, like the interviews from other mums and dads are really important as well,
Yeah.
because their opinions matter as well. When I buy something for my child, I look at what other parents are saying. So I'm starting to get lovely reviews in from parents as well, which is like making me, you know, like I just have the best week when I get these reviews.
Yeah.
And there was somebody gave me a 5-star review saying that she's had the book for 10 days and like her 5-year-old has made her read it for 10 nights in a row. You know, you can't
Yes.
get a better review than that,
No,
like
you
from the
can't.
little person you're writing
Yes.
for.
Yes, you want your book to be the one that the parents
Yeah,
eventually have memorized and the kids have memorized because they read it all the time.
definitely. And I had another little boy who actually did a video message to me saying that he loved it so much.
Oh,
He took it into his school and the teacher read it to the whole class and they
oh,
all loved it too. So,
nice.
you know, things like that are just beautiful.
Yeah. And
That's why I wrote the book.
yes, no, that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
And you want to do you have these reviews on the littlespaces.com website so people can check them out?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the one about the little the child wanting it 10 nights in a row, that's on the product page.
Okay.
The expert reviews are also on the product page. The video review, that's on my Facebook page, so I haven't put
Okay.
that up onto my website yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
Congratulations, Shah. That's so wonderful.
thank
Yes.
you.
And congratulations on launching your book and having it published. That's a lot, you know. It's a big deal. It's a big feat, and so I'm impressed, and I'm just so proud of what you've done in the last year, despite what happened, with your home, but just still forging ahead. That's inspirational. So thank you for coming and sharing that with
Thank you so
us.
much. Yeah,
Before I
for
let you
letting me
go,
share it.
well, oh no, you're so welcome. And I'm going to say this again. I want to see what you do, in another year from now, because I know you're not going to stop. What else are you working on right now?
I am I've I'm writing more, but it's hard to find the quiet time to write. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I've started getting into is I've started my girlfriend and I. Have you guys heard of street libraries? It actually started in the States. I think in the States they call little free libraries. So basically, people can put up little book boxes, any design you want in front of your houses, fill it with books, and it's a great way for the community to share books. So adult books, kids' books, anything you want, you can put it in. And so the motto is give a book, take a book, share a book.
Mm.
So these little street libraries have been popping up around Canberra. And so a friend of mine and I, we both love books. So we said, let's go and check out some of these street libraries. And we went to the first one and we were completely obsessed and hooked. So we made it our mission to visit all of them
Oh wow.
we're in Canberra where we live in
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
And then we started sharing, we created a Facebook page and we started doing a bit of a video tour and sharing our journey. And then the other thing we've done is we've pulled, because there was no sort of association for the Canberra-based librarians. So then we pulled together a Facebook group to connect all the librarians. And then so down the track, I'm hoping we'll be able to do like special events and things like that, just at people's houses, street
Yeah.
library events. And we just think it's a fantastic way for people to connect with one another, like the community to connect with one another old school instead of just electronically like we're all
Yeah.
doing today. And
Yes.
especially for older people, because we have a aging population in Australia, and you know older people, they sometimes get a little bit more isolated. So this is a fantastic way for them to meet the neighbourhood and make connections. So eventually we would love to do some fundraising and build these book boxes and be able to give it away to people, like in the community, things like that. So I guess it's a bit of a community non-profit work that I'm doing.
I love that.
Around
And
that, but around books, So
yeah, you're all about the books, and I like the theme of books and literacy, the whole literary theme that you have going on. If anyone is interested, um Shah had mentioned this to me before. I actually had not heard about this street library, but I did look up something, and I will put a guide to how, if you're interested in starting your own free library or street library, how you can do it in your own community as well. It doesn't replace your public library, but it has kind of a different function. But I will have a link in the show notes for this episode too. And Shah, what you're doing is starting a not-for-profit organization to basically do something similar, right?
Yeah, that's right. So in Australia, we already have streetlibraries.org. So they're
Oh,
like
okay.
a main not-for-profit body.
Okay.
So basically, but I just want to do something for my local community. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't have like a not-for-profit business registration or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that yet, because we're just grassroots at the moment.
Okay.
But down the track, what I would love to do is, just to raise some funds and provide people who might not have the skills to build these things, like maybe older citizens, and just
Yeah.
help make connections with people, because people are isolated and
Mm-hmm.
lonely, and do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
anything to sort of help break those things down is a
Yep.
good thing, I think.
Yeah.
So
I love
yeah,
that. And I will have a link to streetlibraries.org as well, so folks
yeah.
can check that out.
And I've got a Facebook page for the Canberra community if you want to have a look at, some of the street libraries. So we'll do little interviews with the librarians. We call
Okay.
them the librarians in Australia, the people that created and take care of the street libraries.
Oh, yeah.
So they're just all different things. So we've got a few little video tours. So if you go to Lil Street Libraries,
Is that
then you'll be able to LIL Street
LIL? Okay.
Libraries. It's a Facebook page. That's my Facebook page. And
Okay.
you can have a look at different types of street libraries and video tours and things like that.
And is it Lil Street Library or libraries?
Libraries.
Plural. Okay. And it's a
Plural.
Facebook page. So I will have a link to that as well in the notes for this episode, so anyone can check them out. And Shah, if there's anyone who wants to reach out to you and maybe get some more information about just branching out into book publishing as a complementary addition to their products, what's the best way they can reach you?
It's probably my email. So
Okay.
it's Shah, SHAH, at Lil Spaces, LILSPACES.com.
Okay. And I will have Shah's email in the notes for this episode. And I'll also link to her website so you can check out the book, and I'll put a link on Amazon to it. So if you're in the US and you want to check it out, it's probably more cost efficient to get it through Amazon than,
Definitely.
yeah. Okay. And then, sorry. I don't like to forget anyone. And then I'll also put the link to Amazon UK for those for those who listen in the UK, and I think that would be more cost efficient for those in Europe. Where else
Definitely.
is it available?
So if you, what I've done on my website is when you go to my product page, I said, for international international customers, I've listed
I see it.
US, Canada, and UK. So
Yes.
Canada, I think their big one is called Chapters.
Chapters.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But I've listed it on my product page, so the best places. So you can, like, Ijama, if you want to take it off.
Yes,
that.
I will do that.
That
so
would
everyone has a link to their own, to the best place to get it. In the US, Canada, UK, Australia. Okay.
And I need to get you the details of my mentor, don't I, for your show notes?
Yes.
I can email that through to you.
Yes. So if you do want to link up with Shah's mentor, please go to convome.com and look up the show notes for this episode, and I will have more information there that we don't have right now. So I'll have that there. Go check that out. Shah, thank you so much for coming back to the podcast. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I will put you on the spot. Can we follow up again to see how your journey is going with, into the world of book publishing, and just still, continuing to run little spaces. You're that's still going strong, and so I'm just glad to see how you're branching out.
Of course, maybe like halfway through next year might be a good time, because hopefully I'll have more books out by then, and we'll be in the house. Hopefully,
yes,
it'll all go smoothly from this point.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll be able to pick back up the Cloudlight 2.0 back then as well. So yeah,
absolutely.
I'd love to come back, and thank you so much for having me back on the show.
You are welcome, Shah, and I look forward to speaking with you again on the podcast. And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.